Hi, my name is Dr. Philip Alexander, and this is the World Revolution podcast. And this is the first time that I'm doing this outside, so it's a special event with a very special guest, Mr. Greg Kruger. Welcome.
Hey, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you.
Greg is from Fort Wayne, Indiana. He's a former Marine, served in Afghanistan, the founder of Iraq. Oh, my bad. Founder of Forgotten Truth Coaching, is a licensed NLP practitioner, Reiki healer, as a spiritual alignment and integration coach, and is known on social media as the meditation junkie. What made you come up with that name? Let's start with that.
Well, I mean, when it comes to coaching, to me, it's all about alignment and this forgotten truth. It's all inside, and so meditation is the way that gets you there. But to be honest, I was also looking for something catchy that I could use that was relevant. And when you start typing in names, a lot of stuff's taken. And the fact that meditation junkie was a surprise to me, and so it was perfect.
So me and Greg, we've known each other for quite some time. We did some work on this program called IST, which was run by Brandon Bozart. And then we later connected. I'm from Australia, Greg's from America, and we later connected in Bali and did an amazing retreat where we're following our soul purpose to go and change the world, right? And Greg's just this amazing inspirational leader. He's very strong, and it's just a real honor to have you on the show, bro.
Thank you, man. I think the same about you. I'm super impressed with everything you're doing. Actually, I should be interviewing you, I think.
Thank you.
These guys coming out with his voice like I've never seen before. It makes me so happy, man. Because what people might not know is I push this guy. So talented, so quality. Yeah, pushing him. So, anyways.
Let's start with your humble beginnings. You've got you were brought up in a very Christian background that was quite, let's say, religious, and you had your own challenges, and then you later went on into the military. Please expand on that. How did you start your journey in life and coming to this spiritual coach that you are for people now?
Okay, so I think a lot of it was really based in my Christian upbringing, but the Christian upbringing to me created a lot of conflict with my views, and here's why. My parents were both Christian, excuse me, but my dad was Lutheran and my mom was Catholic, so both Christian denominations, right, but different. Because of that, we got put into, my parents wanted us to have some type of Christian schooling if possible. And back then, that would have been the early, maybe 1980. 1980, I would have been 5. So a little bit later. So the early 80s, in the town I lived in, there was still a Catholic church that had a Catholic school with nuns. And so even though my dad wanted us raised Lutheran because he had made a promise to God to raise his children Lutheran, right. He also wanted us to go to a Christian school for upbringing. But we got yanked out of there after about 4 years when the father at the time had made some comment in church. You know, it was kind of weird. My brother and I were the only 2 Lutheran kids in the Catholic school, so we were the only 2 kids who didn't do communion at school. It was really awkward and odd for us. But it was the background that my parents wanted. But when the father made some comment about only Catholic people being saved, my dad was furious, and we went to public schools. Mm-hmm. So that started the conflict. It was weird, you know, and Christianity or church is so important to both of my parents who are still alive. And I always found it odd that something that's so powerful and such a pinnacle center focal point of life also was a point of division, where my mom would go to church by herself and my dad would take us to church with him, and maybe we'd go to church a couple times a year together. So that whole separation was a real weird thing for me, and our experience in the Catholic school, and it just all sparked my questioning, my questioning about how lucky I was to be just this born into a family in the right place where I was saved because my parents were Christian, because we were witnessed to, or I just didn't understand a universal God who would condemn people who'd never heard the word. So it just caused me, as I got older, and maybe it's more so in my college years, maybe towards the end of college or into my military time in my 20s, that I just started exploring other things. I was drawn to research. And I think, to be honest, what really sparked my emotional growth, I always felt that there was more for me, that there was more for me to learn, for me to find out. But I was going through my second divorce, and I was pretty upset. She was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, become a severe alcoholic. It was just a mess of a time, a transformational time. And I just got online and I Googled, blogs and different sites with different strings of content were really big then. And I Googled like self-help or something along those lines. And I just found this forum where that's what it was, forums. I don't know if forums are a big thing anymore, but I found this forum that had all these different topics people could talk about, from spirituality to sexuality to UFOs, anything you can think of. There was probably a thread for it. And I remember I got on and I saw somebody post something about, hey, I'm having a hard time right now and I could really use a good book to read. And this just popped up in front of me, and the first person replied The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And so it was the first time I ever said, this is right in front of me. I'm just going to accept it. It's here for a reason. And I'm going to go get that book. And since then, that has been the start. It's probably why I have a pile of books I haven't read and a pile that I'm in the middle of. When a book comes across or something comes across my path, at least, once or more, and it sticks, or it's more than once, then I've got to get it. So that was a game-changing, life-changing book for me that really sparked me towards exploring more in other religions and philosophies and just practices.
Right. And how did you end up being a Marine and heading to Iraq? Because that's it would be. It's not a common thing to hear of a soldier that turns to this way of life and this way of thinking. In my experience of what I know, I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah, but that's probably more to do with I just like to experience the totality of life, I guess, to some degree. But also, so I had a grandfather, and my mother's dad was in the German army in World War II. Wow. My dad's dad was in the U.S. Army in World War II.
Wow.
So it's quite interesting from that standpoint, right? But nobody really, with the aside of my some cousins I have, nobody else had served in the military in our family. And I always kind of looked at it as, I felt that if military duty was something that you had the capacity to do, then it was kind of your duty to do it. Some people, it's not their thing. I get it. Fine. No hard feelings. But I think if you have the capacity to do it, it takes people to do that. Right. And at the time, I truly believed in in what I was doing and why I was doing it. So I wanted to serve. And actually, I was an alternate for the Air Force Academy. And then I started Purdue University on a 3-year Air Force ROTC scholarship. More basically, I had to get through my first year, and then the rest of it would have been paid for. I dropped it. I dropped it at numerous reasons. It just wasn't for me, both the Air Force and the scholarship. I would have had to study electrical engineering, which is what I went for, and I decided I didn't want to do meteorology, math, or physics. And I was like, I don't want any of that. So I just continued on with college. I was about was 3.5 years, 4 years. I'd switched majors early in college, so it was going to be a 5-year student. Somewhere around year 4, I was really burned out. I was putting myself through college, working a lot, and I'd still always wanted to serve. And a buddy of mine decided he was going. A friend of ours came back from going to boot camp. He was going to be in the Marine Corps in the reserve side, and then a buddy of mine started talking about it, and so we enlisted to be on the reserve side. And I did this because I had thoughts of potentially becoming an officer when I graduated. And I thought one of a few things was going to happen. I just serve on the reserve side and fulfill what I felt was my obligation to serve, just for all the reasons I believed in serving, or I would make an educated decision by serving in the reserves and become an officer, because officers in the Marine Corps, we call them Mustangs, officers who have enlisted experience. They have a lot more respect instead of, just college guys becoming officers. You got these guys who actually had enlisted, perspectives. So I ended up, my educated decision ended up me staying on the reserve side. I decided I didn't want to move around and do the things that were going to be entailed if I went officer and active duty for what I wanted to do. So I stayed the reserve side and served there. And then we ended up getting activated and going to Iraq in 2003.
Right.
And
that was when it all started, isn't it?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to kill anybody. Wasn't involved in anything like that in my service there, which is a fortunate thing. But I did leave my sons, who were 2 and 3 at the time, behind. And so to me, that was a big deal. And to me, that was my obligation. I was willing to serve and do what was required. But it just became more and more evident to me as to the disposability of human beings for our governments, and the way our lives weren't necessarily valued. The things that they portrayed, you see there's a lot of humanitarian missions going on, but you just don't see that in the news. All you see is the death and destruction. And it just put a real bitter taste in my mouth, to where I support our troops always. I have issues with the government and the government's use of the troops. I might not have taken the same path today, where I am now. But I believed in what I did when I did it. But I've always been kind of a big teddy bear. I always say I'm a little boy in a big boy's body.
Gentle giant.
So is the nickname from Bali.
Yeah.
The BFG. Can we cuss on them? Can we cuss?
Yeah, of course we can. Yeah.
Okay.
Fuck yeah.
Which I always said big fucking giant, but apparently it's a big friendly giant.
Yeah.
But no, I've got just I think this split or spread type of personality, where I like to do shit that's hard. I chose the Marine Corps because I thought it was the hardest. I chose Marine Corps infantry training actually because I thought, if I'm going to have the potential to go to war, I want the best training. And I thought the Marine Corps was that, not to downplay any other services. I ended up in the reserve side. It's really confusing. So when I went, I wasn't infantry. I'd switched units. It's a long story. Doesn't really matter. But I like to do that hard shit. I like to do the stuff that pushes me. But I also am super tender with a big heart. And so it's the totality, the total experience of life is what I'm looking for from all sides. And so that allows me to be that Marine, but also, coach in the way that I do.
I feel like you've got a lot of structure and discipline in the way that you speak with people, and there's also this leadership quality that comes out of you as well. You in your work, you talk a lot about the forgotten truth, and just reading a bit about your work to do with aligning to your inner truth, what that might mean for everyone. I think all of us were searching for something outside of ourselves rather than going inwards. Could you just share a little bit about what the forgotten truth is?
So the forgotten truth is simple. It's all inside. So I think what I used to say is one of the most humbling things I've learned in this path of growth is there's this old saying that when you point at somebody, 3 fingers point back, right? What I've determined is that they all point this way, right? And that's the forgotten truth, is there's no blame to be put anywhere externally. It's all inside. And what my goal is with Forgotten Truth coaching is, my belief is experience is truth. Anybody can say words, anybody can read words, but words don't really give you truth, right? Experience gives you the truth. So there's, through neurolinguistic programming and just my style of coaching, I direct people completely inside. I focus on what I call energetic alignment, which is just alignment with their highest self, the best version of them. And I introduce them to some truths that I believe have always been inherent in us, but have been forgotten as we come into this experience.
Well, so let's dig in deeper into this. So what would be the challenges for people to go within, do you reckon?
What are the challenges to go
within? Because we're always looking. I think we're programmed in a way where we look for excuses outside of ourselves. But for some reason, it's just so difficult to actually go within and see that we're the creators of our reality in a way. What do you think are the challenges that people face? Why is it so difficult to actually do that?
I think there's a couple reasons for that. One is it's really difficult sometimes to look in the mirror and look at other people and say, I was wrong, my mistake, my bad. And the other thing is that the outside world is always happening. And the outside world presents people who are out of alignment, who are angry or upset or annoyed. And so that influences us. And so I think we're in this cause and we're taught that everything is cause and effect. So therefore I'm justified if I'm angry at you for being a dick, right? So instead of saying I have a choice, if you're a dick to me, I have a choice of how I behave. Instead we say I'm justified in behaving the same as you because you did it first.
Right.
You stole from me so I can retaliate on you, or you talk nasty to me so I can talk nasty to you. And I think there's that initial justification that happens, and it's a failure to see that we have a choice. But what I kind of analogy I use for people is, let's say your house is in a residential neighborhood and there's a street and your kids are playing outside and some guy walks down the street and he's just a drunken, intoxicated mess and he's causing a ruckus and your kids are outside playing. Well, if you're in a bad mood and you see this happening, you could very well run outside, start shit with a guy, end up in a fight, have words, whatever the case is. But if you're in a calm mood, you may walk outside and try to talk to the guy and find out what's going on with him. And you may find out that this guy just lost his family in a car accident and he's on some bender and he's just losing his shit based on what he's experienced.
Yeah.
The situation is exactly the same. The only difference is you. What are you presenting to the world? So this, you can take this to any type of activity that you think of, the way you present yourself to your boss, the way you present yourself to your friends, the situations that are happening externally are the same. How you present yourself in those is what changes the dynamic and the outcome.
You talk a lot about programs and this thing where our subconscious is programmed in a way. What does that mean?
So from my perspective, my belief, what works for me is when we're babies, we our brain is just taking in all kinds of information. Even now, our brain takes in somewhere around like, I don't know, they say 10 million bits of information per second. So every type of vibration that we take in through our five senses. But our brain deletes a lot of those. So when we're young, the environment that we're put in, you know, we don't know how to speak at first. We hear sounds, we mimic the sounds, we learn the words, we use the words we learn. In racist households, we learn racist words, right? So in loving households, we learn loving words. In violent households, we may learn that the sound of a door slamming means that somebody's about to get their ass beat. The situations that we're in, as we're developing, our brain learns what do we pay attention to and what do we not pay attention to. First of all, our brain is going to be programmed to find the negative in the situations first, because that's survival. Our brain is here to keep us alive. If we had conscious thought come before flight or fight response, we would die a lot faster. You know, you might stand in front of a car and say, wonder if I should move. Or you accidentally stand in front of a car and your body responds and takes you out of the way. Right. So we're always going to have that unconscious brain activity that's determining what's important to pay attention to and what's not. Based on our experience in life, our brain has programs of what we pay attention to, what triggers us and what doesn't. So we go back to that person who had a violent upbringing, and a slamming door triggers a fight or flight response, right? It triggers, oh shit, run, hide, or time to fight, whatever the case is, where somebody like me, maybe a slamming door, it doesn't do anything. It's still just a slamming door. So why does it work differently for that person than it does for me? That person next to me, it startles them. They start sweating. They have a physical response because at some point in their life, that unconscious brain activity, that same activity that keeps our heart beating and our lungs breathing, learned that its door slamming is potentially life-threatening, triggers you to move. Not the same for me. So we all come up and we all have these different programs. To me, what the power is, and this kind of jumps back and forth a little bit, to me then, now our conscious brain is what we focus on, right? So what we're looking at, what we're paying attention to, who we're listening to. Just you listening to me and me listening to you requires our brain to delete a bunch of other sounds that are around us to allow us to focus, right? But we have that power to choose consciously where we are and what we focus on. Most people walk around in their daily lives, I think, pretty much on robot mode, just running their old programs. Right. But when you go inside, you have the potential to control that unconscious behavior, because you can control how fast your heart beats. You can control how deeply and slowly or quickly you breathe when you focus on it. So I think we have the power to control every aspect of ourselves consciously when we learn how to take control of the conscious mind, and that's by going inside. That's kind of a tangent in multiple topics there.
Yeah. What is I've seen your posts. You've spoken about resistance, and there's a phrase you use: resistance equals recurrence. Mm-hmm. What is resistance, firstly, and how does it actually come about, and how do you overcome that?
And that resistance equals recurrence is kind of along the lines of what we resist, we persist, or what we resist persists, I think is how it goes. Well, the simple way to look at that is what we focus on is what we get, period. So if we're focused on what we don't want, we get it. You know, and Brandon actually made a post about this the other day. I talk about this. This is one of the filters we look at, one of the filters we use in life, and that is we're always moving towards our future or whatever. I mean, we're always in the present moment, but the way we as humans in this existence create time, we're moving into the future. So we're either moving towards pleasure or we're moving away from pain. So the way I look at it is we're either facing and going towards and focusing on that which we want, which we're moving towards, or we're still coming into the future, but we're facing backwards, looking at all the things that we don't want, all the pain. Because you can ask people in a relationship or somebody who's single, what do you want in a relationship? Well, I don't want someone who lies. I don't want someone who cheats. So what are they doing? They're looking at their past. Yeah. They're looking at their past, focused on all this shit that doesn't feel good, and they're resisting it. I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want this. Meanwhile, they're heading into their future blind, backwards, and they're going to keep getting what they're focused on. So if they're resisting these things, if they're opposed to that, all these things, that's what's going to persist. And that's kind of a twofold thing. Of course, we don't want those things, but it's just a different energy when we focus on that.
Well, what would you
tell my boys when they're getting ready for studying for tests? You can say, I don't want to fail, or I want to pass.
Right.
To the normal person, that's the same thing. If you don't fail, that means you pass. If you pass, that means you passed. But the word fail feels different. It's low vibration. And so words matter. So the words we choose create our vibrational state. So as I said, the situation's the same. It's you're the one who's different. So we attract what we put out. And if we're putting out a vibrational state that's focused on what it feels like to be cheated on or lied to, it's pretty low vibrational. And, just in general, if you're in a shitty mood, you see the things in people that annoy you. If you're in a great mood, you see the things that you love in people. Same thing. If you're focused on all the things that feel like shit, that's what you see around you. And if you're focused on the see around you. So if you're resistant to things, it's what you're going to get. But I think also it's the resistance to how we feel inside about things. That anytime, basically, if it's something that we're resistant to inside that doesn't feel good to us, and we don't learn to deal with that, if we resist against facing things, I think those things are what persist as well.
So if someone is facing, most of us are facing a lot of resistances. It could be with family, it could be with friends and relationships. How does one actually bring themselves back into their heart and overcome that resistance? Is it more paying attention? And you speak a lot about this as well, paying attention to the words that you use as one. But what are some techniques or things that people can do to get themselves out of that?
I think it starts with vulnerability. It starts with a lot of things. One, it starts with caring enough to explore and ask questions. Why do I feel this way? Where does this come from? How do I change my emotional state? Just having enough, caring enough about yourself and how you feel to listen to a podcast, to pick up a book, to ask somebody, to go hire a coach of some sort. That's where it starts. But I think where really the transformation begins is, of course, inside. It's the vulnerability, the ability to say, I'm not perfect, but it's okay because I know what I want to achieve, right? So I made a post yesterday on Instagram about strengths often showing our areas of opportunity. I don't like the word weakness. I like areas of opportunity instead of that. So I think what's important is that when it's really a big relief when people understand that a lot of your behaviors are not your fault. They're not your choice. We have a bunch of out of alignment people having children and teaching them from the out of alignment place how to be good people. But also, as you mentioned, we have generations and generations of information that's stored in our DNA physically, in our physical bodies, right? So we have all this information from our ancestry that's coming into this physical body, the way we respond to things, our emotional traits, maybe some health factors. And then you have people teaching you from their out of aligned state. So what I realized that I posted about yesterday is I'm very analytical. I can problem solve very quickly. I can look at a situation and I can see all kinds of different outcomes very quickly, and I can be very decisive and just move and be okay with it. That's a great trait. The area of opportunity in that is that hyper analytical can be hypercritical. Since our brain naturally sees the negative first for survival purposes physically, the more analytical I am, the more negative shit I see. And because of that, it can turn into hypercritical, and it can come off, I think, to some people.
You end up creating more resistance in that way.
Yeah, I think I can come off annoyed, which then makes people feel like I'm, and this is in certain situations, like obviously not all the time. But I had a situation with a business partner the other day where he took what I was doing and he took it as criticism against him, that he was doing things wrong. Really, it's just how it came out. Because I'm very straightforward and blunt, my hyper analytical can become hypercritical, can be felt like it's too intense or in your face. So what I realized from this is, one, not all of my behaviors did I choose. I didn't choose a lot of these. I look back at my childhood and I look at my dad. My dad was always looking for something wrong. There's something to fix. There's something that needs to be fixed. My dad's a good guy, by the way. Love him. He taught me a lot. Very hypercritical. Did feel like you were never doing anything right. Didn't really praise you, say I'm proud of you. Didn't know how to do that because he wasn't told those things. And so what I realize, I think for people, so back to the question, to make a short answer long, the first thing we do is we let ourselves off the hook and say, it's not everything is my fault. I didn't choose to be hyper analytical. It's just something that was programmed in me. I watched my parents, who were loving parents, but out of alignment. And these were the behaviors they had, and consequently, I picked up those behaviors. Now I go into my life, and this is what's normal, and this is how I respond. And since I don't like to be wrong, I resist letting anybody tell me my faults. But if I really want to make changes, it's okay. I just go back, I take a look at how I behave, how people perceive me, and let myself off the hook and just decide to make different choices. I'm not sure I answered your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel like there is actually, so there's a program I mentioned, like we're born into with our families, and then there's a program that that society conforms to. It's that powerlessness. This is just the way life is. Program. And then there's. I would say, and I feel like this is breaking into seeing the matrix of what life is that it appears to me that it's actually in love or being free from within, in that place where connecting with your heart, opening yourself to being vulnerable and following the truth of what that could be. There's like a mystery to life that reveals itself, and that is probably the ultimate program, or that is breaking the matrix, where we actually see that we are the creators of everything, and that we're not powerless. We're completely in control of what actually goes on in our life. Yet we have all this information, but we're born into a system through family, and the family that follows the greater system that we're living in. Yeah. Fascinating, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, think about this. Okay. The people that I coach, first of all, as you know, the people we coach, it's got to be a two-way match. And one of the number one matches for me is that the people I coach have to know and feel that there's something bigger than them, something greater than them. I don't care what you call God, universe, source, any of that. That doesn't matter. That you believe in something more. That's step number one. Because the reason is 2,000 years ago, these homes and these electronics and our vehicles, they didn't exist, but people were still living. They were alive. So therefore, that means there's some more meaning to life than all of this shit, right? So this shit is the matrix, this fear-mongered, fear-led, media-led mess of control. That is the matrix, absolutely. And I do think change is on the horizon. I do think more people are waking up. I think people are tired of the matrix of money, prescription drugs, being told how to live. You can't be gay. You can't smoke marijuana. All these different things. It's just total bullshit. People are tired of it. And more people, I think more people are coming into understanding because of technology. Technology can be difficult, but a difficult topic because I think these keep us from being present a lot and they keep us in other places. We're always somewhere else. But technology does deliver our opportunity for you and I to talk right now. It offers opportunity for us to watch YouTube videos and learn online. And now suddenly these more enlightened, centered Eastern philosophies or religions or Eastern ways of thinking and stuff are all made open to us. And I think more people can connect and are starting to buck this system.
Can we go into relationships and do you just explore more about that? How did you overcome your challenges in relationships? Because that's something that has tested you a lot in your journey.
Well, after my last one, which was a soul crusher for me, I couldn't help but notice that my relationships were very cyclical, right? They were the exact same relationship with a different face each time. And each time it became emotionally harder because I was more in love, right? And after the last one, which was crippling to me, I just took everything I had, all my knowledge, all my practices, and still struggled for some time, or still had some difficulties for some time. And I decided I needed to figure this out. Now, I believe that like attracts like. I believe that we get what we put out. How we feel, the vibration that we put out is what we create, and how we create our reality, what we bring towards us in our life. So I asked myself, how am I attracting women that punch me in the face, are verbally demeaning, and cheat because I'm not doing these things? Right. Here I am. It's true, people. Here I am, 6'3", 230-pound prior service Marine, catching black eyes from 140-pound women. Telling people, because I do all my own renovations and work, so I have a shitload of tools, telling people that, oops, a tool came off of the shelf and hit me in the face, and that's why I have a black eye, but it was my girl that did it, right? Yeah. What am I doing that's attracting these women? I needed to figure it out because I'm not fucking doing this again. This is where every time I think I haven't figured out, I haven't so far, so the buck stops here. It's time to figure it out. What I figured out is this. Like attracts like, and the filter that I found that was like, when I say filter, towards pleasure or away from pain, that's a filter. When you talk about how we develop our self-worth, we either develop our self-worth internally or externally, meaning, and these filters change in any given context. So I may be around friends like you or in my work, whether it's coaching or with my nutrition company. And my confidence is all internal. I put in the work. I know what I'm doing. I trust in myself. I trust in my emotional guidance. And so I have that internal sense of worth. now you can go to a family member, or you can go to different relationships or whatever, and then suddenly you're external, where you rely on the validation of the outside world to feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
Hey, you know, some people at work, that's the case. They need to be told all the time they're doing a great job. That way they feel they're doing a great job. And you can tell this because they'll keep trying to show you what they're doing. Look at what this, look at this, look at this, look at this. They need that external validation. Instead of just doing their job and knowing that they're doing a great job, they need to be validated. Well, I realized, stemming back to my relationship with my father, I was always trying to prove myself to him, always wanted him to say, good job, I'm proud of you, nice job, good job. Well, so what happened was I developed this cycle in intimate relationships where I was external. I was, you know, super badass fucking boyfriend because I was helping my partner, and a husband because I was helping my partners start their dream jobs, create businesses and follow their passions. Meanwhile, I wasn't following mine. I was doing so much for my partners because I needed them to think that I was just so awesome. That was what I needed. And I love doing good things for people. So it was a little bit humbling for me because I had to figure out that fine line between, am I doing things, am I acting without expectation? Am I just being myself and being kind and helping people? Or am I doing a bunch of shit to get thank yous and, oh my God, you're so awesome, I love you, baby, all this stuff. So what I realized was in intimate relationships, I was very external, which means I was insecure. I didn't value myself enough to believe in myself. I was insecure. I needed the outside world to validate me. So I did for my partners so they would love me. What I realized was my partners were external. They needed somebody outside of themselves to serve them so that they felt worthwhile.
Right.
So here we are. I serve her. She loves me because I serve her. I feel good about myself. So I keep serving her. Because I'm serving her, she feels good about herself. But this, the external world never stays in alignment. It's always going to be all over the fucking place. And you can never keep the external world straight and in order because we can't begin to imagine what order really means. Everything's coincidental, right? It's so coincidental, everything that happens. So there's no order that we can conceive of, though it's there. Though it's there, we attract what we put out, but that's what it was. I was external. And so what I realized, and I've spent the last 2.5 years, I've dated maybe twice in the last 2.5 years and been single a lot of that time, trying to understand myself before getting into another relationship, but also just being patient and learning to be okay in myself, and realizing that now what a partner is to me is totally a different definition. Yeah. I find value in myself by myself, and when I can do that and live my life and be happy, that's great. When I find somebody who matches that vibration, who also finds happiness within themselves, and they can look at me as a compliment, not as somebody to serve a purpose.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's something I'll pursue.
Yeah, I feel the same way. You got to have your cup full before you can share it with someone else. Can't go. You can't be in a relationship when your cup's empty. It just creates more.
Right. I mean, what about you? But what about you too? Because we talked a little bit in Bali about you and the way you view relationships and what's changed for you. What have you learned?
Well, a lot of my beliefs come from my family upbringing, and in my mind, they're very conservative and not very expressive when it comes to intimacy. So I found that in my mind, there's only just one girl that I'm supposed to meet. And I'm supposed to get married to that girl, and that's it. And so every time I got into a relationship, firstly, I had all of these messed up ideas about, sex before marriage and stuff like that. And I felt a lot of guilt surrounding that. And even like if the girl didn't meet my criteria in my mind of all of my beliefs, then I would just rule them out. And so for most of my life, I'd be in a relationship, it'd be for a long period, but I never really experienced the full extent of what a relationship could mean. And so eventually what ended up happening was I I just started learning more about myself. I didn't get into relationships. After my last one, I was in a relationship for 4 years, and then since then, I just went within and worked out what it was that was within me that was causing me to not have the partner that I truly want in my life, and that's someone that actually stimulates me and challenges me. And then I realized, well, I don't even stimulate and challenge myself because I'm always afraid to commit to something or even to be intimate. So I feel now like I'm starting to, the more expressive that I've become, and you've seen this evolution in me as well, bit by bit. But the more that I get out of my shell, I'm finding that these women are appearing into my life. That said, I still don't. For me, I feel like there's eventually one relationship that that is the most honored, and that's someone that actually supports you. Not supports you, but supports themselves in supporting you, moving towards a common goal. And that common goal, I feel, is in service to humanity, service to the planet. So I feel like as long as I live in my passion and that excites me and makes me fulfilled, eventually that person will come in and accompany me in doing that. But it's been a journey for myself as well, a little bit different, but I've actually been very intrepid, very cautious in the way that I get into relationships. One of them has been a fear of having kids, in the fear that my parents would poo-poo that, and they would, have all of these judgments, because my background is very traditional and cultural as well as religious, which is, would be the end of the world. It would almost be suicidal for my family if I got a girl pregnant and things like that. So all of these fears,
So don't do it Greg Kruger style, because I'm sure that this is a tough point with my father. One, that I've been married twice, right? The other is because my boys, which one is a senior in high school, one is a freshman at college.
Almost twins.
But they're only 3 months apart in age.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I imagine telling your parents, hey, so you're going to be grandparents in 6 months, and in 9 months you're going to be grandparents twice. It was an interesting time for me. But it taught me, I'll tell you what, it taught me a valuable lesson. And that is, when you look at it, all of the constructs of this planet and how we work as a civilization are all fucking human being constructs, right? It's like a new company. When a new company comes up, you build out your standard operating procedures, you build out how the company runs, and you have these rules that you put in place. And that's all that this life is. And our parents are told by their parents, are told by their parents, are told by their parents. Everybody's told how they're supposed to be based on your culture, based on your experience or whatever, which is why your culture is different than my culture. Semi the same, though. My parents were very strict religious, very believing in no sex before marriage. All these things are the same, but culturally we still have differences. So at the end of the day, imagine, so I'm a white boy. So if I were born into a family of Ku Klux Klan members, chances are I would be a racist pig, right? Unless I had the ability somehow in my life to break free of that. Yeah. So the point is that we become siloed, and when we can stop to say, fuck the outside world, fuck it all. I don't care what my parents say. I don't care what my friends say. I don't care what anybody says. I'm living my fucking life for me. Yeah. It's like people who are wrapped up in their kids. If your point in life is to raise your kids, then your kid's point in life is to be raised by you. It's not, Your point in their life is to bring them into this world. Their point in life is now to go figure out what their life is about, just like yours is. We just tend to tag our meaning to our children.
Yeah.
But the learning that I had is about collapsing of our options. So I always say from here, you're not familiar with this state, but Indianapolis, Indiana is our capital. It's roughly, if you take the interstates, it's roughly an hour and a half from here. So if somebody said to me, how do you get to Indianapolis from your house? The interstate's just 2 miles down the road. So I could say, well, there's a million ways to get from here to Indianapolis. I could walk out my backyard, steal a car, drive across the field, ride a motorcycle, take back roads. The second that I say, take Interstate 69, and that takes you directly to Indianapolis, then I've eliminated all these other possibilities, and that's all I look at.
Absolutely.
This goes back to your thought process. So for me, one of my goals in life was to really create, part of it was based on my upbringing, was to have just this open, super strong family unit of communication and love and friendship that was different than what I had. Not that I learned, I had a really good upbringing. I didn't do without, I didn't. And my parents did the best they could. And they're loving people. I just wanted something different. And so I always had this picture that it would be one woman, have children with that woman, always stay together, no matter what, always got each other's back, ride or fucking die. And that was going to be the answer to creating a family. I started by having 2 children with 2 different women within 3 months of one another, one of which I married. That was my first marriage, married to mom. And it's a long story. I was with her for a few years. We broke up. I had a thing. She got pregnant, got back together. She got pregnant and I married her. So it was a wild ride. Point being is my perception of creating, how do you create a strong family unit? Boom. You stay married to one person and that's how you do it, because that's how I was told and that's how I learned to believe it.
Right.
I started by creating split families. Initially, right out of the gate, after I got a job, I didn't know if my first son, Cage, was mine at the time. She had just split up with her ex. I got a new job, got into pharmaceuticals, and was going to be 3.5 hours away. Found out he was mine. And so initially there was a time when she even didn't drive, and I would have to do 3.5 hours one way. So if I wanted to bring, in the first couple years of my son's life, first 4 years, if I wanted to bring him to my house instead of my parents' house, which was kind of in the middle, I had to do 14 hours of driving. 3.5 to get him, 3.5 back, 3.5 to drop him off, 3.5 back. So 14 hours in a weekend.
Yeah.
I ended up moving eventually after I went to overseas and came back, and I got a different job with a different company, was able to move closer so I could be closer to Cage, because he was 4 or 5 at the time and he was going to start doing a lot of things. But in the process of this, still being an hour and a half away to this day, my son has seen me do 3.5 hour round trips just to watch him sing in a choir concert for 30 minutes when he was a kid, because he had to be in choir or band or something like that, or to do. So if he had a band, he played trumpet when he was in middle school. So I would drive an hour, 3.5 hours round trip just to watch him play a couple songs.
Wow.
So in this process, instead of saying this is the way to create a family unit, what I found was there are all these different ways. And my way just went like this. And then through it, my relationship with my boys is beyond anything I could have ever thought. So I've overachieved what I thought was possible by doing it in a way that most people would say I'm fucked up. That's fucked up. Oh, you must be a whore. 2 women pregnant at the same. All this fucking shit that people could judge me for.
Yeah, you just
I fucking owned it.
Yeah, you did.
I decided that my boys were my responsibility. There was never going to be an 18-year-old man show up at my doorstep and ask me why I wasn't there. They deserved as much of my time as humanly possible. If it required me driving 100 fucking hours, I would do it for them. And that's just that. And they know that loyalty exists, that bond exists, and there's an honesty and a truth that we have between us that's indescribable. And so I'm grateful for that difficulty. And so I think with those types of experiences, this comes back to vulnerability, especially how I coach is for my clients. I want them to tell me shit. Like, tell me what you've discovered. Tell me what you've experienced, because, here's what I've discovered. Here's what I've experienced. And judgment is out there. Fuck the judgment. Let's just look at where we're at. And sometimes when I find these, why am I attracting these type of women situations? It's like super fun. And that's what I tell my clients. It's like, get fucking excited. If you realize that you have a behavior that's kind of fucked up that you want to change, it's your area of opportunity, look at it. And when you see where it came from and you understand it a little bit, get excited, right? Because it's like if you're at work and you're trying to solve a problem, there's some issue that you have, and then you find the answer, everybody's fucking excited and we have the solution and we fix it. Yet as a human being, often people, they're afraid to say that. You can't find the solution unless you look for this. You got to look at the problem. You got to look at your difficulty, or what your area of opportunity, what you're trying to deal with. And when you look at it and explore that shadow work, then you can find the answer. And instead of being afraid of external judgment, you can just get fucking excited about it. Don't care what anybody else thinks and own it for yourself.
It's a powerful message, bro. Thank you for sharing that. I've got a round of questions, some quick ones. Some of them are interesting. Some of them are profound. What it
Some of them are awesome. Some of them are awesomer.
What is your opinion on aliens? What's your thoughts on that? Do they exist?
There's like 32 million. There's like 32 million or 320 million galaxies that exist. Are we really the only things alive? I doubt it. Now, here's my thing. I don't discount anything. I don't discount anything unless I know. Like, I know this isn't water. So if somebody said that's water, I would discount that. That's not water. It's a fucking phone. I don't discount anything unless I know. And I've never seen an alien, but I would have to think by the law of averages and stuff that they probably exist. I don't think we're the smartest fucking creatures. We're just not the dominant life force.
Absolutely. What is your beliefs about reincarnation and past lives?
Again, I don't remember past lives. But my understanding of energy is that energy is not created or destroyed. It just is. There is this energy. We don't know how to. Scientists don't create energy. I don't think so much as they manipulate it. I think that energy continues to exist. I think that we're spiritual, energetic beings, and I believe that we exist beyond this body. And I don't think it's far-fetched to say that we were. Well, let me put it this way. If we are all connected to source energy and we are all part of the same energy that creates planets, then that means technically we all are the same energy, and we're just coming and expressing and realizing a perception from a different angle. So technically, I guess I believe that I'm talking to myself when I talk to you, just in a different form.
All right. What is one thing you would tell yourself 10 years ago if you could go back in time with what you know now?
I wouldn't tell myself anything, because I absolutely love my life right now. I love who I've become, and to change anything in my past is to change who I am today. And I would be afraid, that I wouldn't have met you, maybe. If I would have told myself something years ago, then I would have a lot of friends that wouldn't be my friends potentially. So I would just probably watch myself. And if I went back 10 years ago, I would probably be a fly on the wall and watch myself so I could understand things and bring them back to the now moment.
And
take that.
Right. And but expanding on that, what's some advice you would give to someone that has been through what you've been through?
What I've been through, I think ultimately every human being experiences the same emotions. They experience fear, anger, sometimes hate, love, joy, sadness. We all experience the same emotions. Just the events that trigger those emotions are different. So what I've experienced isn't, sometimes, it's easier for people to say, well, your life has been harder than mine, or your life has been easy. Sometimes you can see people who've had easy lives, and that's really been dictated. People dictate that based on financial status a lot. But I think in the end, everybody is the same. We all experience the same things, and we all just have a different perspective. And if you can stop to understand that your programming didn't all start by your choice, and my programming didn't all start by my choice, then when I look at you as a different human being, I can give you some space to be different than I am. And because I'm asking you to give me space that I'm different than you. So what I would encourage people, I'm not sure, I don't remember what the question was. What would I tell people who haven't been through my experience?
Just some advice, yeah. I think you just answered it. Yeah. Yeah,
be accepting and start to go back and understand the basics of human beings and how we work, with how our brain works, how our body works. Consciously, we see something, we think a thought, the thought triggers a chemical response, the chemical response triggers a physical response. We all work the same way. And be accepting of that, because our unconscious brain deletes shit based on our experience. Everybody's experience is different. That means no two people are alike. That means there is no normal. If people say you're not fucking normal, it's because there is no normal. Normal would be a generalization. No people can be generalized because everybody's fucking different. So there is no normal. Weird is good. Weird is normal.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Be fucking weird.
What are 3 books that have influenced you most, and why? You mentioned Power of Now.
Power of Now. Yeah. That will always be in my top, probably in my top 3 to 5, probably my top 3. That'll always be my top 3. Because it really helped me understand and learn how to start being present. And then I read it 2 years after the fact, and I remembered all the shit I forgot. So I'm probably due to read it again. It's been about 8 years since I read it, or 6 years, something like that. Power of Now. I think the Tao Te Ching is super powerful. Right. There is
Lao Tzu's teachings, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. I like the Stephen Mitchell translation because he notes, he's got a great reference section in the back of his, Stephen Mitchell has a great reference section that kind of gives comparisons of thought processes around his translation, because there's thousands of translations of the Tao Te Ching. Recently read how this one, I just posted about this. This evaded me for years, but The Alchemist,
it's an amazing,
so on point, so on point for me today, because I'm just learning at 43, soon to be 44, to stand in my fucking power, right? Like you are, you and I think are a lot alike in that we've kept our voices quiet. Even though I'm very energetic and in your face, I've kept my being, my coaching, all that stuff really on a quieter level. In the past, I think we connect there, but so that was a book that I can hardly put down. I absolutely fucking loved it. One that pops in my head right now, maybe because somebody listening to this might find this and appreciate it, is Teal Swan, The Completion Process. Right. That was a really good book to me. So I think that's a couple that were really good. Currently reading, one of the books I'm currently reading is The Wisdom of the Shamans by Don Jose Ruiz. So he's the son of the guy who wrote the Four Agreements.
Wow. Okay.
So that's been pretty good. And I'm in the middle also. I usually have like 4 or 5 books. I'll read them. And then for some reason, if another book is just calling to me, I'll pick up that book and I'll read it for a while, and then another. But I'm The Wisdom of Insecurity.
Okay.
Go figure, right? Because I told you insecurity was something I realized I had at the time in intimate relationships. So The Wisdom of Insecurity, and that's an Alan Watts book.
Alan Watts is amazing too. Yeah.
He can be pretty heady in his work. I was reading a book on Zen, and it was really difficult to get into. But
it's non-dualistic Advaita, isn't it? It's this concept of everything is one and that there's no separation to anything. Sometimes that's really hard to actually accept.
Well, right, but it's true. So I think about it like this, like what I just said about Mew and I were the same. We're talking to ourselves, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Is this Greg Kruger? Is this Greg Kruger, or would you say that's my finger? It's my finger, right?
Right.
But it's connected to me.
Yeah.
It's connected to me.
Yeah.
I look at myself as kind of that, as an extension, as a part of the total. Because what I really think is kind of interesting and kind of a mind fuck is, you're a physician, you're a doctor, you know, there's over 500 trillion living fucking organisms. Just cells, 500 trillion cells. That's not even the bacteria that's living in our body, right? 500 trillion plus living things that make up me. I am just me. I'm me. No, I'm probably 800 trillion things.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you think at the cellular level, they've shown, you know, it's really based, the brain is the cellular membrane, right? Because it decides when it encounters a stimulus, it decides how to respond to that stimulus. Does it run? Does it reproduce? Does it fight? Does it develop in other cells develop ways to fight this external force? At the cellular level, cells respond a lot like human beings respond to the external world. We encounter a stimulus. You know, sometimes we decide to reproduce all at the same time. So, you know, with multiple people. That was a joke there, but sometimes we fight. Sometimes we run. So do you think at the cellular level that the cell looks at it makes the same types of decisions that we do on the macro level? Do you think the cell thinks
Absolutely.
It is an individual, or is the cell just one of 500 trillion things that make up a larger whole?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the same energy that holds us together, because nothing is really solid, right? There's technically no such thing as solid. There's always empty space. So even when we touch ourselves, we're not really touching. We're just, the energy is stopping.
It goes into a whole, yeah. Another thing.
So the energy that holds us together is the same energy that holds the trees together in their form, or this countertop together in its form, and it's the same energy that creates planets. So somehow we're fucking connected.
Yeah.
And it's measurable. Scientists, so it doesn't matter what your religion is, scientists can measure the electric energy, the energy that flows through us, and you can see that when you put your feet barefoot on the earth, that you can reduce inflammation and change. They can watch heat signatures in your body, and they can see that the connection to the earth, even the energy changes. We're connected. You know, if you want to deny that, go join flat earthers.
Go join. I didn't. Not aware.
The flat earthers. I can't begin to know how and why and what the totality is. I won't begin to try to explain what that is. I try to look at things that I've experienced. So I say experience to me is truth. So my truth is different than your truth, based on my experience. But my truth is that it appears scientifically provable that we're all just, we're connected energetically.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Who is your biggest spiritual inspiration?
This guy by the name of Philip Alexander.
Wow. That's
So,
a massive...
in some given moments you would be, but I would say I am, because when I align with my higher self, I'm going to put you through this meditation. A couple people from Bali group have done it, but I'm going to do this with you. Not that you've not aligned with yourself, but maybe in a different way. When I find alignment with myself, with that best version of me, I believe that there's this point, the totality of energy and consciousness, God, source, whatever. And then there's the physical body. And then there's a point where the physical body, the soul, or the energy is put into this physical body. And to me, this version, when you're connected to the physical presence, living in a spiritual fashion, that's the best version of you. That's the melding of source energy to the physical. That's the best version of you. When we're put into this physical experience, we can often become separated and forget where we are. When we can connect to that center place in ourselves, then we have that connection, I think, to source energy. And I think from that space, that is the most spiritual inspiration that one can have, because there's no spiritual teacher that can duplicate what it feels like when I'm just all of a sudden seeing a sunset and a cool breeze, and suddenly you just have that moment of complete and fucking peace and connection and love. And there's nobody that can duplicate what that feels like to you, except for the experience that you have with yourself in that moment. Yeah. So I've had, but outside of that, if I had to pick a person, I would say it's been so many people. It's been every coach that I've ever worked with. It's been every person in Bali, because man, that was a life changer for me. One of my best experiences I've ever been on. So it can vary. Anybody who I allow myself to be present with can be a spiritual teacher to me.
Love that, bro. What is your greatest challenge?
Currently, I am excited and challenged by just new revelations in certain programs. Like I said, this hyper analytical becoming hypercritical. Kind of in verse of what you and I have talked about before, where you bringing out a stronger voice. I think one of the reasons I connected with you is I'm trying to shut the fuck up a little more. This is a challenge for me, to be honest, to withhold input, but it's something that I'm working on. I want to be, this just came to me in my journal. I wrote it, practice silence. Practicing silence is something that I'm working on, but in that silence, it's practicing letting go of the analytical side. It's very difficult difficult for me because it's how I've always been, and so I just naturally walk into a situation and I fucking hyperanalyze. I don't like how that feels, so that's just different. Getting myself to breathe and just not care, kind of.
And what would you say is your greatest strength?
Um, Probably my greatest strength is, I would say, is my compassion. Like um, I really love to make a difference in people's lives. Especially when they're just in need. I think there's nothing like that's more fuck yes than when you're in a situation, you have no fucking what you're going to do. You could really use some help, and then out of the blue, there comes the answer, right? Whether it's some people were having a hard time, generating money to get to Bali, and then there it is, or somebody's. I had a friend one time. I just met her. Maybe I shouldn't use names. That was a made up name. Who, when I just met her, she didn't believe that the situation for she didn't believe that the situation for her and her 4 girls was, or for her and her daughters was safe, or it was a good situation. She left her husband, and she's a nurse, and she moved into. She was so excited she got this place, and then she got fired from her nursing job. Total bullshit when you understand the whole situation. Here she was, thought she was doing the right thing, suddenly didn't have a job and didn't know how she was going to pay her mortgage.
Yeah.
I paid her mortgage lent her money out of the blue. Somebody she didn't know. I came over, I helped her out. I helped her give her referrals to new places for working. She ended up finding a job. I talked to the landlord, who was all of a sudden afraid that, oh my God, this girl's going to default. I called her. I said, hey, here's the situation. I'm helping her. No matter what, you'll always get your money. Just please give her some space, give her some opportunity, to just, I've got her back otherwise. Not patting myself on the back for that. I just know that the universe, God, delivers what we need in all kinds of forms. And sometimes it's through another human being. Sometimes the words that we really need to hear come out of our own mouth, and we're telling other people, if you take the time to realize and listen to your own words. Yeah. And I was just the means for that to be delivered for her. And that's just a great place to be. I think there's nothing that feels better than to know that you can help other people that way.
Last question. Today was your last day on Earth. What would you do?
Well, I'm single, so certain things are ruled out. I guess if today was my last day on Earth, I would immediately determine if I had the ability to get my boys with me, spend time with them, do my best to spend as much time outside, view a sunset, sunrise, whatever. I would meditate for sure. I would journal. I would probably just spend as much time as I could with the people closest to me. I would try to call every single one of my friends, tell them I love them. Yeah.
Thank you, Greg, for doing this interview. I know you're really busy as well, and helping a lot of people with your massive heart. Could you share with us this little bit about what you do and how people can get in contact with you?
Yeah, I'm super excited that I finally, part of my story is I spent 18 years in pharmaceutical sales, and the evolution, I always say the evolution of Greg Kruger was far beyond what I was doing. I believe in pharmaceutical intervention to a degree, but it was just not there. I got to resign that last year. So thankful for that. And so now my life is about helping people, both in the physical aspect. We have our company, Dream Nutrition, Dream with 2 E's, DREEM, and we're a hemp nutrition company. And so we have CBD oils and different really good hemp-derived products that we can help people physically. And if anybody has questions on that type of stuff, Greg, Greg, at dreamnutrition.com is my email. Dreamnutrition.com is our website. Lots of education there. So there's great blogs and videos that talk about products in general, not just ours, just because we believe in empowering the consumer and helping people understand cannabis, what cannabis is, why it works in the body, how it works in the body, how this natural plant supplements a natural system in our physical body. So it's all about education. So dreamnutrition.com or greg@dreamnutrition.com is how you can reach me on that side, and helping people on the physical side. On the spiritual, emotional, energetic side and alignment, it's Forgotten Truth Coaching. You can follow me on Instagram at Meditation Junkie. That's Junkie, Meditation Junkie. I'm on Facebook. Probably really hard to find me. It's amazing. If you put Greg Kruger into Facebook, there's a lot of fucking Greg Krugers. So
Is that?
yeah, there clearly cannot be only one. I mean, there can be only one of this one, but
I don't think there's anyone in the world that's like you.
Crushing life.
You are crushing it, and I think since Bali, you've been doing quite well. So thank you again for your time, bro. Really appreciate it. Really honor you, and look forward to doing another podcast with you. That'd be awesome. We could extract more knowledge from the source and really get in there.
I love you. Thank you, sir. Yeah, so happy to be on here, and you'll be my first live video interview that I've ever done with my friend Philip Alexander, and it's a wrap.
Love you, bro. Thank you.